At 2:47, tiny drones zipped over the water. Missiles fired, cannons roared, and still, nothing hit. The airspace was already lost. A Russian patrol boat picked up an unexpected target on its radar. The blip was small and moving low. It was not a jet, it was not a cruise missile. It was a handful of FPV drones flying into Crimea's most protected airspace. The operator on the drone feed watched the screen change. The defense network reacted. 5 surface-to-air missiles were launched. Each missile was expensive. Each missile represented precision engineering and training. About 30 million rubles of ordnance left the tubes in quick succession. None of it found a strike. The drones kept flying. They were still intact. Their mission was clear. They aimed for the radar domes on Mount Ai-Petri. Those domes sat on the summit like white eggs. They held radars worth millions. They reported tracks and fed targeting data across the whole region. The domes were treated as critical hardware. The defenders assumed they were safe from small, low flyers. They were wrong. On the beach, a Panzer S-1 unit tracked the horizon. This was a point defense system. It was built to stop cruise missiles. It was built to protect high-value sites. The operator sent the system to intercept. Missiles streaked up into the dark. They burned through fuel and seekers. Still, the drones passed unharmed. The Panzer switched modes. It moved from missiles to 30mm cannons. Tracer rounds stitched lines across the night. They made bright patterns. They did not hit the targets. The shells fell short or fell wide. The operator was baffled. The drone crossed the radar beam at about 50 meters altitude. That flight path created a Doppler notch. Radars do 2 jobs. They sense a return, and they measure motion. Motion toward or away from the radar is radial velocity. If something flies mostly sideways to the beam, radial velocity near 0. To the radar's processor, a target with near 0 radial velocity looks like ground clutter. The system filters clutter. The drone disappeared into that filter. Sea reflections made the problem worse. Radar waves bounced off the water and produced ghost targets. The tracker tried to average the real return with the reflection. The result was wrong aim. Missiles were sent into empty air between the real drone and its mirrored echo. Proximity fuses on the missiles expected a solid radar return. They were tuned to detect returns the size of a car door. These FPV drones returned a sliver. They were 1/100th of the expected radar cross-section. The missile logic would not treat them as valid targets. The missile did not detonate. The drone flew through. More drones appeared on the thermal screen. They came from several vectors. They converged like wasps on a hive. The Panzer saw them at 2 kilometers. Its missiles needed 1.5 kilometers to arm. That left 12 seconds between detection and overflight. 12 seconds is a narrow window. The system required that the window aim, arm, and intercept. This threat reduced that time to barely anything. Radio traffic spiked. Controllers demanded fighters. The Panzer operator reported multiple contacts. He reported missiles that would not track. Voices rose. There was confusion. These were not the large, slow targets the system trained on. These were cheap electronics moving at highway speeds. Their profile and speed made them functionally invisible to systems tuned for different problems. At 2:50 a.m., the lead drone altered its heading slightly. It lined up on the first dome. In those housings were radars designed to watch the sky at long range. They could track ballistic missiles and provide early warning for the Black Sea. They were built to survive serious attacks. They had massive value. They had not been designed to meet a shaped charge at chest height. An Su-30 was scrambled. It cut through the pre-dawn. The jet was Russia's answer to modern multi-role fighters. Its BARS radar was capable on paper, but in practice, it too found the drones elusive. The BARS needed 5 consecutive sweeps to confirm a track. The drones showed up and then vanished. Their returns dropped below the noise floor after 2 or 3 sweeps. The noise floor is the baseline static that the receiver sees. A return below that floor looks like background. The radar cannot tell the real from the noise. It stops building a track file. The pilot could not get a stable lock. The pilot fired an R-73. That missile is an infrared seeker. It hunts for hot exhaust. Jet engines burn at very high temperatures. The R-73 seeker expects signatures measured in the thousands of degrees. These drones ran electric motors at around 50 degrees Celsius. The seeker could not see them at range. Only within about 500 meters would the seeker get a useful signature. By then, It was usually too late. The missile could not turn fast enough to correct. The jet then pushed the GSH-30 cannon. It poured 30mm rounds at a high rate, 1,500 rounds per minute. The fire control computer predicted a lead angle on the assumption of steady motion. The drones did not fly steadily. Every 2 seconds, they made small lateral jinks, 2 to 3 meters. Those tiny shifts became tens of meters at range. The rounds solved the old position while the drones were in a new one. The rounds missed. The pilot exhausted missiles and rounds. He climbed back to base low on fuel. He reported failure. 4 missiles, hundreds of cannon rounds, and nothing to show. The airspace remained contested. At 2:54 a.m., the lead drone reached its first assigned target, the 96 L6E radar. NATO calls it cheese board. This radar supplied data to S-400 batteries. It could track many targets and coordinate engagements. It gave S-400 systems the long view they needed. Without the cheese board, those batteries had a short horizon. The drone used a shaped charge. A shaped charge does one thing well. It pushes a jet of molten metal at very high speed. The jet pierces electronics and mechanical structures. It turns delicate circuitry into twisted, smoking scrap. The shaped charge struck the antenna array and shattered the system. Complex electronics failed in an instant. The Su-30 pilot watched the thermal feed as the radar went dark. He had nothing to hand off. The network lost a node. The effect rippled. New radar contacts appeared at odd positions. They came from 10 kilometers off the coast. They materialized as if from the water. Those contacts were not airborne. They were relay boats. Unmanned surface vehicles sat 10 kilometers offshore. They carried tall antennas and data links. They relayed control from Odessa to the drones. This arrangement solved a problem. The curvature of the Earth and line of sight limit simple radio control to a few miles. A boat close to the front acted like a remote tower. Operators in Odessa could send encrypted commands to the boat. The boat broadcast to the drones. The drone video feed ran back the same route. To the operator, it felt like direct control. In truth, the boat handled the long link. The boats are slow and low. Coastal radars were programmed to ignore vessels under 20 knots. The software filtered them as civilian traffic. The boats ran at around 15 knots. They looked like routine craft. The radar refused to put them on an alert list. They were a deliberate, low-cost concealment. At 2:57 a.m., more boats launched more drones. The swarms did not fly in neat military formations. They scattered. They took random paths. Yet they converged on set points. This tactic reduced predictability. It reduced the chance that defenders could find the point of convergence in time. The first wave found ground access panels. Those panels are meant for maintenance. They are built to resist blast pressure. They are not armor for direct hits from shaped charges. A small patch of steel might survive an aerial bomb. It could not stop a focused copper jet. The shaped charge punched through. The dome's base at ground level was suddenly vulnerable. The Nebo dome was hit next. The Nebo radar operates at VHF bands. It is designed to detect low-signature aircraft at long range. It was the backbone for stealth detection. It fed S-400 batteries with a detection picture stretching far seaward. With Nebo damaged, the S-400s lost their over-the-horizon capacity. Their own radars could only see tens of kilometers. The net effect was severe. At roughly 3:02 a.m., hits continued across the mountaintop. The Pontliot K1 radar suffered damage to its transmitters. The shaped charges created plasma channels in the circuitry. A copper jet that punctures a waveguide can drop a circuit's resistance suddenly. Insulators char, conductors weld, currents surge, modules fail in a cascading fashion. A BK-16 landing craft in the vicinity chose to engage. The crew opened up with 14.5mm deck guns and small arms. Their navigation radar showed dots. It could not provide firing solutions. Navigation radars see position. They do not compute intercept geometry. The crew fired on pixels and hope. The drones ignored the fire. They followed GPS waypoints and struck with mechanical certainty. With key radars burned out, the S-400 systems became decorative. They retained fuel, missile rounds, crews, and pride. They lacked the feeding data that made them useful. Acquisition radars could not pass targets. Fire control radars could not receive tracking data to guide interceptors. Launchers sat idle or fired into blank air. The chain from detection to intercept was severed. The Atri command post went dark. That post coordinated Western Crimea's integrated air defense. It processed sensor fusion. It passed tracks. It issued engagement orders. A shaped charge breached armored access. The bunker turned into a fire pit. Computers smoked, cables burnt. Secondary explosions suggested munitions went off. The command capability that tied the network together was gone. When one node fails in a network defense, the remaining nodes degrade. Modern air defense depends on data sharing. Each radar covers a slice of the envelope. Together, they create a layered picture. Remove the bottom layer, and the upper layers cannot see what flies low. Remove the early warning, no, D and longer range shooters cannot operate to their full reach. The mission to blind and then destroy exploited that concept. Several technical points are worth laying out plainly. First, Doppler and the notch effect. Think of radar like a speed camera that also sees position. The radar measures how fast an object moves toward or away. If the motion is perpendicular, the measured speed drops. The processing filters low radial velocities to avoid clutter. The drones were exactly the kind of motion the filter removes. The sea made a mirror return. So the target's real return and its reflection confused the tracking logic. Second, radar cross-section and proximity fuses. Proximity fuses look for a certain return to know when to detonate. They count on a minimum reflected energy. High-end missiles assume that their acceptably large targets will produce that energy. A tiny drone returns far less energy. The fuse does not see a valid target. The missile does not explode at the right moment. Third, seeker spectral bands. Infrared seekers look for hot sources. They are tuned to certain wavelengths. A jet engine emits strongly in the mid to long infrared. Electric motors and small batteries emit far less and at different wavelengths. An IR seeker tuned for jet plumes cannot find a laptop warm motor until it is almost within the missile's no-escape zone. Fourth, guidance dynamics and turn rates. Modern missiles can pull extreme G loads, but a missile's physical turning radius is still finite. When you engage a small, unpredictable target at long range, the missile may not be able to correct in time for a last-second jink. That is physics, not electronics. High closure speed reduces the time for correction. Fifth, low altitude coverage and radar geometry. Mountaintop radars can see far, but they also have minimum depression angles. A radar sitting at high elevation cannot look straight down at very low levels close to the shore. Below a certain angle, it creates a blind cone. A boat at sea level inside that cone can launch drones that appear to come from nowhere. Sixth, relay architecture. The operators did not attempt a direct line-of-sight control from Odessa to Crimea. That link would not reach. They used floating relays. These acted like remote towers. They fed video and control back with low latency. This architecture reduces operator exposure and keeps the launch points outside the defended area. Seventh, software thresholds on coastal sensors. Many maritime radars have civilian masks. They filter anything moving below a speed threshold. That prevents clutter from fishing vessels from creating false alarms. It also makes it easy to hide a slow, small unmanned vessel among routine traffic. Software designers value operator time. That value creates soft spots. Eighth, structural design assumptions. Radar domes and access panels are engineered for blast and fragmentation. They are not designed to meet a penetrating shaped charge aimed at a small focused point. Armor mass and overpressure resistance are different design problems from anti-armor penetration. Ninth, networked dependence. Integrated air defense is a system of systems. It needs early warning radars, mid-range tracking assets, fire control radars, interceptors, and command nodes. The weakest link undermines the whole chain. In this case, a low-cost tactic severed multiple links at once. The assault used low-cost tools in a layered way. Small drones did not try to be big threats. They were precise. They were expendable. They targeted nodes, not mass. The relay boats extended control ranges. The overall architecture multiplied their effect. Each piece alone would have been limited. Together, they produced an effect out of scale with their cost. The defenders responded with high-end tools. They used expensive missiles, fighters, and automated guns. Those tools were optimized for different targets. They were not wrong in capability, they were wrong for the problem at hand. The sensors and weapons functioned as designed. The tactics had not accounted for the geometry, signatures, and scale of the attack. The result was rapid. A few hours of action turned layered defense into a set of smoking components. Early warning radars failed. Low-altitude trackers were lost. The command node burned. The S-400 batteries remained physically intact, but cut off from the information that made them lethal. No single piece of hardware failed because it was unreliable. Each system failed because the attack used the inherent physics and rules that the systems relied upon. Doppler filtering, noise floors, minimum depression angles, proximity thresholds, seeker bands, and software masks are all sensible engineering choices. They make systems work well against the threats they were built to face. They also create predictable boundaries. Those boundaries can be exploited. The pilots, the operators, and the crews did what they could. They fired missiles, they sent jets, they burned rounds. They reported failures and attempted contingencies. The engagement did not end because of bravery or lack of will. It ended because multiple nodes that made cohesive defense possible were rendered non-functional. The network that tied battlefield awareness to effectors was no longer there. If this mission gave you chills, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. More real, behind-the-scenes combat breakdowns, shown exactly as they unfolded, are coming soon.